Thank you. Merci d'être venu ce soir. Thank you for being here tonight. It's great to see all of you. Thank you for your support of ISB. As Richard said, I am Marianne Sorel. I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees is our overall governing body of the school. As you may know, we are an independent nonprofit school, which means we don't get any outside financial assistance from any source or from the US or from the French government. Everything we earn goes back into operations. And as such, we are governed by a board of trustees, which is entrusted with keeping the nonprofit viable and relevant for the future. So our work on the board is mostly strategic and long-term planning, and we focus in three main areas of responsibility. Our first responsibility is safeguarding and protecting the mission of our school, because as a non-for-profit, we have a mission, a raison d'être. Oh, is that me? And
that's part of our IB music program.
we good? I can keep going? Okay. Should I stay further away? Okay, backwards. So our first responsibility is protecting the mission. Our mission is being a French-American bilingual international school, and as the board, we must protect and preserve our mission and make sure all of our activities are in compliance and furtherance of our mission. Our second main responsibility is ensuring the financial integrity and viability of the school, both short-term and long-term. So we do, of course, year-to-year budgeting, but we also do midterm planning and long-term planning, because it is our responsibility to ensure that the school is viable for not just our children, but our children's children and generations to come. And we work very closely with Isabelle Pro, our CFO, on that. Our third responsibility is to select, hire, work with, and evaluate the head of school. And then in turn, the head of school is the CEO of the school. All day-to-day operations are in his side of the court. So he manages all academic programs, all faculty, staff, and personnel, as well as the physical facilities and everything at the school. So that's the difference between the head and the board of trustees. The board of trustees at the moment is composed of 15 members, and we come from a variety of different professional and personal backgrounds, and we try to keep as much diversity of opinion on the board as possible. So we have some members of the board who are current parents. We have some who are past parents, parents of alumni. We have some members who are outside members of the community who aren't otherwise associated with the school, but they have a dedication to our mission, and they bring other skills to the board. We also have a few alumni on the board, including a young alumnus, someone who graduated a few years ago, and he's moved on to graduate school and now is working. And we have a couple members who happen to be alumni of our École Bilingue when we were a small school before we had this nice Cambridge campus. But we are always looking to diversify and add voices to our board and to our committees. We work through committees mainly, and we have committees that are composed of board members as well as the appropriate administrators and other parents and members of the community who have skills and interest in those areas. Most notably, we have a finance committee and a buildings and grounds committee. And we also work very closely with advancement, with Melissa in advancement, and we're always looking for... There we go again. I just must be very exciting here. We work with advancement, and we're always looking for people to help out there, to help spread the word and encourage the community and the spirit of philanthropy in our community. So we're always looking for help there. So if you have skills and interests in any of these areas, please reach out to us. There are a number of board members here tonight, and we have these fancy pins on. So please come and talk to us if you are so inclined. But I know you're here to hear the state of the school, so without any further delay, I pass it to our head of school, Richard Olfers.
See if this, we're up and running, great. So First order of business, we are recording this, and we will send it out later. For those who couldn't make it, that's a new thing for us, is to record our efforts. So I'll do my best to make sure I'm using the microphone, and if there are questions later, I'll try to repeat those. That's thing one. Thing two, I wanted to acknowledge a great number of our faculty are here tonight, so thank you so much for being here, and our administration as well as our board. That's a testament to who we are. We want to have great conversations together. Third element, which arguably could have been the first one, as you all were alerted to today, we had a real-world shelter-in-place exercise. There was a robbery in Davis Square. I'm learning it wasn't the first time. That happened even at that bank. And we had a great process where we activated our protocol. We alerted our teachers, who then therefore took care of our students. They took it very seriously, as did our students. And to share with you, a shelter-in-place means you stay inside and you carry on the day as usual, meaning the danger is somewhere else, quite a ways away probably, but just to be careful. We were very happy that Cambridge had sent not one but 2 squad cars to be on our campus to ensure that we were feeling safe and secure. Working with the team, we crafted those messages to get to you as soon as possible, our steps, and we tried to keep you updated as much as possible with relevant information. So we weren't overdoing it, we hope, but we were keeping you apprised of our steps. So that was a major upside for us, that we activated our protocol. It worked well, and I'm really thrilled that the team, the teachers, and everybody really stepped up in a real-world situation. By the way, I still don't think the perpetrator's been caught, so hopefully none of you are walking around with money you don't own, and you're here for the right reasons, okay? So I wanted to get that out of the way. So tonight, of course, is the State of the School. This is the third one I'm doing here at the school. This is my 3rd year. And before we get going, I wanted to sort of pose a few questions to sort of frame the evening. And the 3 questions are why, what, and how. And we're going to try to answer those questions in the process of tonight. So the why question is really, if you expand on that, is why are we doing this kind of education? An international education. For many and almost all of you, a bilingual education. And probably the quick short answer, of course, is for a global perspective, for critical thinking, for being a little outside of your comfort zone, being engaged in the world. I hope tonight you'll see examples of that. So the next part of the presentation is really some of the what. What do we do to begin to answer that question? So a little bit of back up to what Marianne had to say. Sam? Voilà. So for those at home, slight technical difficulty. What I'll do is I'll just voice over because we'll just move right through it. Basically, just to repeat it because it's worth repeating, and it should come from the school perspective as much as the board perspective, which is the role of the board. And the role of the board, of course, are the 3 things mentioned: safeguard the mission, ensure its financial stability, as well as hire, retain, and evaluate the head of school. I've been thrilled to work with this board. It's been a very generative kind of board, very strategic in its thinking, and it's been a great ride right up until right now. So I thank you for that. Voila. It's all right. Thanks. So the agenda tonight, the role of the board, which I just got into. I'm going to take time to talk about some mission successes, and then we're going to get into updates on the strategic plan. Many of you are repeat customers here hearing this for the 3rd time. You've heard me talk about getting ready for the strategic plan, how it worked. Well, we now have one, and I want to share with you tonight how far we've gone so far. And then I'll end with what I would call the usual conversation around the operation of the school, which is how we finance things. And then we'll hopefully leave some room for some question and answers in about 20 minutes, I hope. Okay? I'm happy to take questions as we go. However, if we kind of let some of this roll through, then hopefully we can catch them all at the end. All right? So we talked about that. Also, it should be said that the board is following best practices. We often have outside people come in to help us make sure that we're following those best practices so that we're working at a highest level possible. Academic successes. Especially in the lower school and middle school, one of the metrics we look at, of course, is what's called the Education Research Bureau. And those are those exams we deliver usually in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, sometimes 4th grade. And these are exams we do not prepare for. They're just a test that kids take one day. And we compare ourselves to other kids who take the test, which are many, but what makes us unique, of course, is our bilingual program. And what stands out, of course, is as our kids grow up, not only do we perform at grade level, but we begin to surpass grade level because why? Our bilingual program equips our students to think. And it begins to show very much so as they get into 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. One of the metrics, of course, is when they are able to qualify for a search around gifted and talented associated with Johns Hopkins University. So we're always proud of that. We usually range between 50 and 60% of our students qualify for that step. Also in the academics, especially the pre-K through 8, is very much solely hinged on our bilingual journey. This is very much the heart and soul of who we are, and we do it wonderfully. Starting with the littlest ones, over time, they have the ability to acquire 2 target languages. It's not French on the side, it's not just ESL forever. It's actually getting kids to a position of equal understanding in 2 solid languages across all the subjects. Math and art, PE and science, and so it goes. And many of you can attest to that now. That's what the heart and soul of that section is about. As we move up, we get into our high school section. Of course, we look at results as a measure, and we'll talk about other measures here in a little bit. Our French bac, we're always proud of our ability to score very well, 100%, often with very high honors, 80 to 90% honors, so that's mention très bien. We had the same, it's not up here, but for the brevet, last year we had a 100% pass rate, and 100% of our students had a mention. So we're not going to get much better than 100%. When it comes to our IB, we're doing well here in 84, which is above world average of 78. We typically get between 85 and 90%, which in the IB marking, that's very high. Also, especially for students who stick around with us and they follow the bilingual program, they get a 100% pass rate on that, which is, compared to the world average of bilingual diploma candidates, that usually hovers between 25 and 30% who pass at that rate. Meaning, our bilingual kids who do the IB tend to pass it with flying colors. And then that leads to another measurement of how do those students go after here, university placement. So we're always proud that we have many countries available to them, and this year they have up to 12 countries have been accepting our students. That's a little unusual. If you are in other schools that are not international, and certainly not like us, that number might be 1 or 2, and most likely only the UK, maybe Canada. Our kids, it's Netherlands, it's the UK, it's Canada, it's Italy, it's France, and elsewhere. So that's a really great place for them to be. They have choices. And I mention that broadly because I think everybody has been following the news about how things have been going in college admissions and how people have been playing maybe not so well. The pressure's on. Our advantage is our kids can go anywhere. They can go anywhere. They don't have to only go here. So that's a really great testament to our programs, that they can take that and do something with it. And of course, within the United States, over 21 states, DC, etc. Some highlights, of course, for the first time for our school, our young high school, by the way. we've got a French-backed kid who's been accepted conditionally, of course, at the University of Cambridge, which is a great testament to the program. A couple years ago, an IB student got into Harvard. We've had successes at MIT, University of Chicago, McGill, etc. So we will be publishing those lists in due time, but we're always proud of our students' abilities to have multiple acceptances across the world. Okay, what's going on down there in that maternelle? Plenty. So a few things I wanted to highlight there, of course. We're an international school, and of course with the littlest ones, one of the easiest things we can do is use our international families for an international buffet. They get a chance to see all kinds of food from around the world, and it's great for them at that age. It's exciting. Also at that age, you know, if you think about maternelle as preparing them to be ready for school, these are great activities for them to be thinking about, talking about, listening about in those two languages, mostly French in those ages, as we know, to begin to understand what it means to have an international perspective. And not just an international perspective, but all kinds of perspective. So up there's a gentleman, I believe, with a ball of some sort. He's a magician. Well, what in the world is a magician doing in maternelle? Well, he's inspiring a sense of curiosity. He's inspiring a sense of creativity. And isn't that great when you're 3 and 4 and 5? And then the other picture here, of course, they're playing drums, and arts are important. Get a sense of music, and even more creativity, and how to work together and how to work individually. All skill sets to be ready to be a student as they enter into the lower school. This is not to say these are the only things that happen there. There are plenty of other things, but I wanted to highlight some of the aspects that you might not always see or hear about. So we move on to the lower school. The top picture, I believe that's 5th graders, and they went to Lowell. And they went to one of the old mills as a historical venture to understand our local history. Often in international schools, you can tend to skew towards world or Europe or where you're from. It's important to know where you're from here. There's a local history to understand. Also, they get to go outside. There's a whole habitat program so they get used to the environment. So little ones come home and start yelling at you, why are you throwing away used food that could be well used? Or why aren't you using paper bags instead of plastic? And then of course, 3rd grade is famous for its Moon Journal, which is arguably one of the better interdisciplinary projects the school does. They have to write, they have to present, they do a bit of art, there's even a bit of math, they have to do some science by observations. So it's quite the project. It takes a month. How many have done it? So you know, late nights 3 times, might be 4 times in the back over there. So it's a great project. Even if you have to stay up until 2 a.m. to see the moon, it's quite good. There's also other things that happen in lower school too. Now they become a student. They're more active in their classroom. They're applying skills of academia, the reading and writing, the math to science, the partnerships between grades, 5th graders helping 1st graders to read. 4th graders getting a chance to work with 6th graders in a theater project. So we're starting to cross the divisions now, so they make connections. Now we're moving, speaking of middle school. Photo on the left there is, I believe, our first trip as a middle school to Quebec City, because Monsieur Philippe Caron-Audet is from that strange place called Canada. And so for a very long time, his predecessor had taken kids to Montreal, a great trip, and we all agreed it might be an interesting opportunity to take advantage of Quebec City. So we did. So thank you. Kids had a great time. And then up here, that's a student exploration program. They get a chance to choose some different kinds of coursework, not graded, required. And they do things that are really outside of typical coursework. And if you look really closely, you'll spot our CFO, who's animating the class. Good for her. And then down here is a group of children who are involved in the middle school version of the Model United Nations. And again here, this is not the only things we do in that section. There's plenty of other coursework, academic work. Most recently highlighted between middle and lower school, every year they do the Concours Kangaroo. And we have, once again, kids who are earning the top 1% level out of tens of thousands who take that course. So that's a mathematics competition, and they have very, very great success there. Testament to the program, testament to our teachers. Moving right on up to upper school. Here we got some really interesting things. That's not me, is it, Sam? No. This top bit here, this lab, our biology teacher has found a lab that she takes excursions with her students to get a full-blown lab experience, hands-on, what it's really like. So it augments our own laboratories that we have on campus. As we move to the right there, that is the Future Business Leaders of America. That's Lucas. He got 4th place in the Massachusetts competition for his presentation. He's now qualified to present nationally at San Antonio in June. So that's a business perspective. We got science, now we got business. And then down here in the bottom right, the big blue one, that is the Mission Laïque Française. That's one of the international organizations that we are associated with as a French school. Our 10th grade students put together a video all around the notion of the rights of children, which was the theme presented from the Mission. And they won 1st place in the world. I know we've shared that on social media. I encourage you to see it again. It was a nice clip, about 2.5 minutes. Quite clever, black and white. I know Kathleen De Palma, I don't know if she's there tonight or not, but she helped the students get there. Again, strong work between students and their teacher. And they earned 3,000 euros that they put towards their own charity, which is the Schott Foundation. Over here on the left is our senior Grace Swang, and she got 1st place in Poetry Out Loud. So these are just examples of what our students are capable of doing with this kind of education. This also, again, it doesn't detract from the internships that we're doing, the entrepreneurial programs that we're promoting, amongst other things in the section. Carrying on with successes in the arts. Up here is an IB art exhibition. That's a proper class. 5 times a week, there's a portfolio, they have to produce work, it has to be assessed. That image right there is a skeleton made of wire. It's pretty much to scale of the person who made it. So it's actually, 5 foot, whatever, 5'10". So that's a pretty interesting piece. And of course, our littlest ones, performing, having a chance to sing, get on stage. That's great for them, gives them some confidence under the bright lights. Then we carry on a little bit in lower school. There's an orchestra. That's fairly new to school, last 3 years. Alexis has put that together, and that's great. It's grown in these few short years here. And here, this young man, Basil, he was at the New York Theater Festival recently. He earned 1st place for his acting, and he received that prize from Jean Reno. So, pas mal. Huh? Yeah, so again, the kinds of things that are successful for our students. Athletics. We're small but mighty. We have boys teams, we have girls teams. That is a boys soccer team. That is a girls volleyball team. First time we've had a girls volleyball team. And of course, our tried and true fencing program, still alive and well. And there are other sports that we bring on board based on the needs and the numbers. I'm understanding in our girls basketball team, we're the first time ever we got a championship within our little league. So we're making our way. Experiential. That's really designed to just have the experience. So here, that is a day of service during Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So a bunch of lower school kids mostly, preparing things for that exact day. Up here on the top right, I believe is Nature's Classroom. That's a middle school project. They get, again, outside of the classroom, they go elsewhere. And in the bottom picture with those very, very happy young people, they've just got back. That was Tenerife, an exchange program. So they get to use their French and their Spanish. They get to visit some parks, and of course they get a chance on the beach from time to time. And they get to interact with a correspondent who will be joining us in very short order. So that liaison between cultures and countries. Community. As an international school, community has a particularly important notion. So the top left is a very inclusive event. I think somebody actually captured this guy. Anybody and everybody can come. It's a picnic on our site. Bring your kids, bring your family, have a great time. Move to the right, just recently our gala, another community event, of course with the purpose to raise monies, that those monies help us aim our work, our mission-driven work to support students. And I wanted to share with you this year's gala was particularly successful. We've found it to be a high watermark in terms of not only fundraising, but what I'm calling the fun quotient. It was a great venue. Teachers, families, our consul was there. We had a great time. And we hope to repeat and do next year. This year, many of you have heard me talk about one of the major themes we started the year off was with diversity, equity, and inclusion. We worked with our speaker here, Dr. Derek Gay, who came to us in January, but he helped us begin our year with some workshops in this room with our teachers and our faculty and our staff to have conversations about what does that mean here at our school. It can be easy to lean on our multinationalities and call it a day. But that's a bit short-sighted in the modern day, so we have to be careful with that. We have to be good about having great conversations and how to have those conversations. And the photo on the right bottom there happened just yesterday in our upper school. We took time to read as a community in the upper school the book Night, really much about Judaism and anti-Semitism, which of course has been a problem not just in our school but across our country and our local areas. Lots of schools are struggling with that. We wanted to basically lean into that, find out more about it, get better at understanding it, so that we can converse about it in a more humane way. It gives me an opportunity. I wanted to borrow heavily from our just recently appointed upper school director, Mr. Michael Perazzo, in the back of the room, who at the end of that session shared with the students that in the last 2 weeks, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam were all under attack. So I think that's a problem. That's why we're having conversations like that. That's why we put at each table a French track, an IB, a brevet, a ninth grader, a teacher, a girl, a boy. You see my point? Forced to have conversations across the usual lines or groups so that we actually become stronger. Super important. Not yet. That's part of the what. If you recall, I asked the question why. Now we just went through a bunch of what. What did it look like? You also might notice almost everything I've talked about in the what category was outside of the classroom. Meaning, much of what students learn and will remember and will memorialize happens outside of the classroom. It doesn't mean the classroom doesn't matter. Of course it does, because they couldn't apply any of that out there unless they've gotten great solid work in the classroom. And many of those classrooms go outside as part of that. But it's that experiential component in all those divisions and all those activities, plus the ones I can't fit on the slide, that are manifested there. I wanted to really put that in front of you, that this school is doing a lot, and in 2 languages. All day, each day, every day. Okay? So now we're going to get into the how. which is how are we going to get there going forward. So that relates, of course, to our strategic plan. We've done the strategic plan, we've published it, and tonight I'm going to share with you a couple steps we've taken already, our guiding statements, and of course the maternelle. As the years progress, we'll be working on other aspects, but tonight we're going to focus just on two. Okay? So a little bit of a word about guiding statements. Guiding statements are the things, the phrases, the terminologies, the words that drive the organization, inspires us, helps us understand what we're going to stand for, what we would defend as a school. So with that in mind, I've often asked a room like this, who can recite the current mission statement? Correct. The answer is correct. Not too many. A lot of hard work went into that current mission statement, so don't get me wrong. But it was time to do a review, and part of the strategic planning process teed up a conversation about what does our mission have to say, and can we make it something that we can all think of and be a bit more memorable and easier for everybody, including the littlest ones. So a lot of hard work went into that from the strategic planning process, which included all of our constituents, that fed a small group of administrators and board members to come up with, and has been recently approved, this. We cultivate excellence through French, English, bilingual, and multicultural learning. Key points: excellence, French and English, and multicultural. It's pretty straightforward. And it is who we are. We have not undone what ISB is about. We've actually, by simplifying, we've enhanced our school. And in due time, this should be a phrase that would last for the foreseeable future beyond the 5 years we've laid out. We try to come up with something that we think would last some test of time. The next part of our guiding statements relates to core values. And the core values work came from our students and mostly from our teachers last year. Many words came up, many phrases came up, and our goal was to get that down to something manageable that would be applicable, again, for all grades, all constituents. So, excellence, character, and community. So kind of a very French way, you have three things, trois parties. So excellence in all that we do, not just academics. And the words around each of the main words are words you would use to sort of prime the conversation. And they were often some words that were part of the group work that teachers and students had put together. So we wanted to honor that work. Character, that means like a strength of character, building character, empathy, thinking, these sorts of things. And of course, community. We talked a lot about community tonight already. Our community, the community we engage with, the community across the street or across the world. Excellence, character, and community. Again, the littlest ones could be able to remember that. So you can expect in the fall these to be plastered all over the school. Everywhere, every room. New buildings, old buildings, etc. That's a lot of words. I'm not going to read it to you. It's called a boilerplate. It's very much what's called a fact sheet. It covers all the stuff that a mission statement or core values wouldn't cover. It basically says, we're a school. We're a certain kind of school. We serve a certain number of grades. We happen to be in the United States. We're accredited, et cetera, et cetera. It just covers all the facts of the school. So if you think about all that put together, that's a guiding statements package. A mission, core values, and a boilerplate. And as the school develops, we can envision adding other guiding statements, maybe a definition of learning, or a definition of internationalism, he says, with accreditation in mind next year. Okay? The next thing we did, so that's been approved now by our board. So we're set. The next area is maternelle. We're excited by the next chapter. We know it's coming here to Cambridge. And we know we're going to put not only the maternelle, but even the first grade, in fact, in our building 4, which of course was the old convent. And what I want to share with you tonight is that that move is happening, and it's going to foster our one campus mentality and our mantra. It's going to be very nice to have the littlest ones be able to see just across the way to what the big ones might do one day, or what they might do one day as a big one. Connected, creates collaboration with faculty and staff, easily move between buildings, easily understood for families who come for 3-year and 4-year programs what it looks like when you're in 2nd, 5th, or 12th grade. They'll get to see it on a daily basis. Voilà. This is a rendering. That means a sample of what we think it's going to look like. Let me explain. That's the building. And this is basically the front yard. Okay? In that front yard, it's presently just a roadway and some grass, if you can envision that. We're going to put a dedicated play space here with some relief kind of play structures, slides and mountains and soft patches so they can bounce around on the floor. Maybe a little mini soft pitch that would look like that. An entryway that has colors. We're going to move the asphalt from close to the building to closer to the street that we can cut off and open up for traffic purposes. And when it's cut off, it's a place for little ones to cycle or use tricycles or run around or skateboards or whatever. I know some of you are going to be asking about traffic and so on. Please know that we have been working with our traffic consultant. We have been opining what we need, what they would recommend. You can expect a communication from the school by the end of the school year in preparation for next year. Okay, we're excited by that plan, which includes a lot of opportunities to come to school a little bit differently, trying to be a little bit more eco, to absorb more of our faculty and staff on campus and all the families. Of course, the upside, it's a one-stop drop-off. For many years, many of you have come to me with, I can't get from Arlington to Cambridge and back to Harvard, so we're trying to alleviate that. Melitza wanted me to talk about our Giving Day coming up on May 15th. Typically, a school like ours would do a spring campaign to wrap up our fundraising components. But instead of having it dragged out over several weeks with lots of emails that can get a little bit much, we're going to focus on one day and one day only. And we're going to focus that high participation rate, focus only on our front yard of our new building. We want to do the best that we can do so our little ones have a great space to be in, and that people from outside can see us as, wow, that must be some kind of school right there. So we really want to see that to be a positive outcome on May 15th. Tell your friends. Okay? Another sort of how is the operations, and that sort of code for how do we finance the school. Many of you have seen this before. Oops, let me back up. First step, it's always mission driven. Another way I talk about it, and sometimes Isabel and I go back and forth, but it's never about the money per se, and she's on board with that too. It's always mission driven. What serves the mission first? Then we worry about the dollars behind it. And it's pretty simple. We're a nonprofit school, so it's really a revenue stream and an expense stream. I've said that before. There's no derivatives. There's no secret account in Switzerland. It just comes in and it goes out. And every dollar is for the mission. The budgeting process, we think in at least 3-year increments and sometimes longer. so that we're prepared. Our finance committee is instrumental. They ask strategic questions to make sure that we're thinking about what our budget can do or should do in the future. And the timeline is also pretty simple. It's fall, winter, and spring, typically late spring. In the fall, the school, mostly at the administrative level, proposes what it thinks it needs for the following year. What do we need programmatically? What do we need in terms of staffing based on that program? What do we need in terms of facility? What do we need in terms of stuff? So that's that blue sky thinking in the fall. And then late fall, early winter, we narrow that down to a budget that we propose to the Finance Committee, to which the Finance Committee reviews and proposes to the whole of the board, to which the board in the winter votes. That the tentative budget will be X based on an enrollment number that we think is going to happen. And then after enrollment season, about now, we're almost there, the board will put a final vote on a final budget. So for those in the business industry, that's quite long. All that probably happens within about 2 weeks in some industries. For us, it takes that much time because the process is slow. Okay, these are my famous bubbles. On the right is the revenue, and the biggest bubble, it's not proportional, but it's 85, 90, sometimes over 90% of our tuition is, of our revenue is tuition. So we're a tuition-driven school. Another percentage, 4 to 5% sometimes, can be development. So that's our fundraising arm. And there are a few other things, other being, that's very much money in out. So lunch programs, money in, pays for lunch program going out. So that small bubble is about that. Okay, so it's very simple. Tuitions drive our budget. So what do we spend the money on? The big bubble over here is programs. That's code for mostly faculty and staff. People. The people who are teaching your children. So we spend quite a bit amount of money on that, 75% typically, on our people. And then of course the stuff they need to do their work. Overhead includes administration, also includes things like insurance, keeping the lights on, just the stuff to be in business. Another significant bubble is repair and maintenance. Big facilities require big efforts to keep them modernized, safe, and appropriate for a school. We aim to have the kinds of facilities that don't go overboard, but are modern enough to stand some test of time, and so they look good for a while. We try to be smart about our purchases and how we do our repairs. But some repairs, as we know, can be out of our hands. Last summer, as many of you know, we put some time into a piece of our roof, which is a slate roof. And for those who own a home or have been involved with housing, slate roof is a little bit different price point than other kinds of roofing. So it takes planning and thinking on how we address those kinds of repairs and maintenance. Another important bubble there, which is fairly small these days, about 7% of our budget, is our budget amount towards financial aid. It's a mission-driven objective to use our money to help families be in our school, and it's important to us. We hope in time that we can increase that piece. We're fortunate in a way that we can also augment that financial aid about 6% through the French mechanism, if you're a French family, the French bourse, through the consulate. Just so it's super clear, we are an accredited French school. We do not get French money directly from France. There's no secret French money. Okay? Sometimes I get that. So when you get the money from France, that doesn't happen. Okay? Things we're working on now are reserves. I'm happy to report that we have reserves these days. We're aiming to get about 20% of our budget. Our overall budget, by the way, is about 17 million. So we want about 20% in the bank for any given reason. rainy day fund, possibly a potential to use it towards some kind of augmentation of what we want to do, like a down payment on something we want. And then the other yellow bubble that we'll have to get to another time is an endowment. Presently, we don't have one. We, of course, want one, but that's a very long-term goal with a long-term solution, by the way. It takes quite a bit of dollars to make an endowment worth it, given rates of exchange and percentages and so on. Okay? So a $17 million budget, 70-75% are spent on our faculty and staff, and the rest is spent on everything else. We're trying to build reserves as best practice, and one day we want some endowment, and we want to increase our financial aid. We want to pay our teachers the best we can, be at or maybe even above area market. And we have a faculty working group that does exactly that, have discussions about what that could look like for them going forward. Okay, so there's a lot of thinking that goes into how we budget. And we are also sensitive to families. We try to keep our range in the single digits, usually between 3 and 6. We try to alert you to that. We would never come out and say 12 without any kind of forewarning. So you can prepare yourselves. So that's the balancing act. That's why it's on a fulcrum. Right? And there's only so much we can do in a year. But if we think strategically back to the big swoop, we can plan what we want for the future in 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years' time. Okay? Longer than I wanted, but I think we've just about wrapped it up. So questions? I'm happy to take any questions. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Just want to ask you about the preparation for the college. What specifically the school is addressing, how is it addressing that, how it's preparing the kids as far as standardized testing, or having people come visit the school,
Sure.
talk to the kids about that.
So the question is about college prep. I'm repeating for the folks at home. The school does a lot. We have plenty of sessions that we talk to students, and we can grab them because they're here. We open up to families as well, and you need to come in to learn about that. Our teachers work with students on their SAT prep when necessary and when needed. We talk about the process of what it takes to get into colleges in this country and elsewhere. We have 2 college counselors, one who focuses on sort of mostly the Anglophone world or international. And then we have one very specifically on the French program, because that's a different animal. And throughout the years, 9, 10, and especially 11 and 12, we spend individual time with each student and their family to think about the kinds of schools that they would like to apply for. There's a lot of data used. We use Naviance, and they plots their grades and their scores and their other attributes, and it gives you a range of the kinds of schools that you could apply to. We always want to encourage our students to try for something you really want to go for, what's called a stretch. And you have something that's sort of in the middling ground, things you're pretty sure, but you know, it's a gamble. And then you have a few in the back pocket that it's a for sure. So our students, year on year, always have choices at the end of the day. Okay? Thank you. I always have to pay attention. I have to pay right, because if I don't, then I miss left. There we go.
I have in fact a couple of questions. One is, what are we trying to do to increase the visibility of the school?
Mhm.
And there are a lot of programs. I mean, my son, for instance, was interested in high school quiz show. I mean, we never try, and I know our numbers are small, but still we have talent, as you suggested.
Yep.
So maybe there are things that we could proactively encourage. I mean, it's obviously too late for us. We'll be ending school next year. But eventually that could help with the proactively increasing visibility of the school. This is my first question. My second question is in regard to community building. We, in fact, have a lot of good programs, and I mean, galas and stuff like that, but we lost a couple of those programs, including the Spring Fest that has disappeared for whatever reason.
Okay, that was a lot. Let me if I remember. First one was about visibility and what can we do as a school to raise the profile. I'm all aboard about that. Absolutely, we want to do that. And some of the things you saw tonight, like our students participating in those competitions and gaining recognition in the world and locally, more of those, of course, as much as we can. Of course, with our marketing strategies and so on, we want to keep doing the other bits of just attracting students generally to our programs, using our programs of study, IB in particular, and of course our French bac. So it's these things and. So we're very much attuned to those ideas. Community. We have some great community events, and you're right, some of them have sort of waned a little bit. A lot of that is hinged on interest level and how much people want to be involved. Often, parent organizations kind of ebb and flow. There can be a lot of energy, and as you self-identified, some folks had a lot of energy, and they graduated, they went elsewhere, and sometimes it's hard to follow that. It can be big shoes to fill. So I think we're sort of in that moment now, but luckily we've been able to set up systems to which people can volunteer for very specific things so that we can keep certain things in place, like picnics, like spring picnics, maybe not a spring fest, but something that's close to it. Maintain our bread sale, but maybe not the basket. We got to find a way to have things balanced, and then get that energy back with a new crop of people who would want to animate things up a little bit more. So yes and yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am. So the question is about the front yard and will it be ready by September 1? It will be ready by September 1. Plans are in place. We've, through the Buildings and Grounds Committee, lots of people have been opining on that, teachers, administrators, other parents, in fact, our planning consultants, our architects. So we've got it all lined up. We'll break ground as soon as the kids leave school. It's a big summer project. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be really cool. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the questions are revolving around traffic, and to help frame it, because you're fairly new to our school, so bringing the maternelle here brings more faculty and staff here and more families here. So that's basically potentially more cars. So we're trying to mitigate that uptick in traffic that's coming here because they're not going to go anywhere else. Our priority will be to make sure that our faculty and staff have a place to be. That's number one. And then number two is make sure that the traffic flow is understood and well communicated, what we expect in the mornings mostly and a little bit in the afternoons. Afternoons tend to be a little bit more staggered naturally. People kind of come and go differently. There's after school programs. It's not quite the rush of 7:45 in the morning. So we're looking at different hours of operation in the morning, staggering things perhaps. So we're going to be solidifying those plans very soon. In terms of safety, pure safety, one of the things we're looking at is potentially how do we staff certain parts of this so that we have eyes on that and be helpful. I can't control Mass Ave, but we want to equip people with the right information so that when they do cross streets that they're doing it well and safely. But we're putting our shoulder into this question all the time. Okay. So crossing guards is the question. It's a potential. We might have to provide that. We haven't quite gotten that far yet, so I don't want to overpromise that. But it could be something along those lines. People. How do we ensure that we can make sure that students who choose to walk a little bit, which I think is great, that they do it in a safe way. Okay. Maybe one other question. I'm sensitive to time and wine. Here's what, before I answer the last question, I'll answer the last question. Then what we would love to do is carry on and have some more hors d'oeuvres and another glass of wine. And there you can have a lot of individual conversations with either me or a board member or one of our faculty or other administrators. We're here to answer questions. Okay? Curtis.
I was just noticing, it seems to me a few years ago, building 1, building 4, I can never keep them straight. There was some thought that maybe we could have a competition to name them. The Marquis de Lafayette, the Catherine de, I don't know. But the numbers are less than descriptive, and I was wondering if that was maybe something that could be on the agenda going forward.
It is on the agenda, Curtis. We want naming opportunities that work in a certain way because the building numbers are a Cambridge Fire Department thing.
Not a noted poetic organization.
You got me. You got me. Listen, everybody, I really thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Do not hesitate to ask some questions over a glass of wine in the back. Thank you so much.